We could not do this series without our incredible sponsors. So a big shout out to San Diego County Credit Union, the Observatory, West Coast Tavern, Asana Partners, A7D Creative Group, and McFarland Promotions.
It's not big bank banking, it's better. SDCCU is a not-for-profit financial institution focused on people helping people and giving back to our customers and the community with low or no fees, low rates on loans, competitive rates on deposits, innovative technologies, and support for local nonprofits. SDCCU.com. It's not big bank banking, it's better.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 24th annual San Diego County Credit Union Festival of Arts virtual series. Can you believe it is the last one? I cannot. I've had so much fun these past couple of weeks doing all these different activities with all of you. And I'm sad that this last one I can't even taste. But I'm going to hear all about it today, and we're going to talk about some awesome Mezcal tasting as well as enjoying some awesome tacos. I'm Coco San Diego. I am a local influencer, and I live here in North Park, so it's been amazing to meet so many local businesses. And I'm actually sitting here with Dang and Matt, and they're going to introduce themselves in a second. But I have to tell you guys how much I love Bar Pink because I'm a die-hard 80s fan. I love new wave 80s. So when the Smiths cover band would play here, or my favorite New Order, it was my favorite time to be here. So I'm sad that I can't enjoy it right now. But the other thing is I love Mezcal. So I've been to Oaxaca once, and I became a connoisseur then because I've been to Oaxaca once, and that's what certifies you as.
That makes you an expert.
Exactly. So why don't you guys introduce who you are before we get into the tasting?
My name's Dang. I'm one of the owners here at Bar Pink. We've been here for 13 years, and this is my good buddy Matt.
I'm Matt Gordon. I had a restaurant here in North Park for about 13 years and moved on last year, but my heart's still here, and Dang and I have had a lot of great bonding experiences over Mezcal, so we thought this would be a good, fun opportunity for us to do this together.
Awesome. Well, I think we should just jump right into it. So I know we've got quite a few of these that we're going to taste, but why don't you guys start and give us maybe some history of
Sure.
where Mezcal came from and what it is?
Yeah, interestingly enough, until the European, introduction into South America, they didn't know how to distill anything. So prior to the Spanish arriving there, they had lots of beverages that they would ferment and make from agaves and other plants. But it wasn't until the Spanish arrived and showed them distillation that we got what we kind of now know as Mezcal. So, it originates, Oaxaca's sort of the main area for it, but there's 8 other states that Mezcal can be produced in, unlike tequila. But it's also the origins of tequila. That's where it all began.
Well, yeah, so one of the big misconceptions is Mezcal is a derivative of tequila, but in actuality, all tequilas are mezcals, but not all mezcals are tequila. It's dependent upon, like Matt said, the states that they're produced in, and as well as the process in which they're produced, as well as the type of agave. With tequila, it's solely from the Blue Weber agave, whereas mezcals are made from 50 or 60 or more varieties, different varieties of mezcal of agave.
Yeah, that was something interesting that I learned, and they take forever to grow, right? Years.
So the main agave that most mezcals are, the base agave is called espadín, and I think that's a 6 to 8 year maturation. And so most agaves that people are familiar with are made from espadín. And as you get into more expensive and kind of take a deeper dive into mezcals, you start getting into the wild agaves. So they're not necessarily more expensive because they're that much better, but because they're harder to source. Some of these agaves, like this Tepestate we'll be tasting later, takes about 15 years to mature.
Wow.
And there's some that are take even longer, and they're wild agaves, so they're not necessarily cultivated on a field. Someone has to go out and source them out out in the mountains, and some of these. And we saw when we were in Oaxaca going on a Palenque tour, agaves growing out of rocky outcroppings on cliffs, by themselves.
I love that. Is Madre Quiche or Quiche?
Madre
is that-
Quiche, Madre Quiche.
Madre, That's the one I ended up loving every time I was like in Oaxaca and tasting. I was like, oh, I like this one. It's a little like sweeter and almost has that like caramelized finish.
So there's a couple things related to tequila that kind of make the main separation. You know, you mentioned how long they take to make. So, you know, Mezcal has held on to this artisan tradition. And unlike many things, when you go to Mexico and, you know, something that costs $40 here is $20 there, the Mezcal there costs the same as it does here because the art, the experience, the time, and the tradition it takes to make it is a big investment for everybody. Tequila was sort of the answer to that when we were in Prohibition 100 years ago. Californians, Hollywood would go down to Mexico because they couldn't drink here. And they couldn't keep up with the demand for alcohol. So tequila really came out of the need to make mezcal faster and cheaper. So they just steam it, ferment it, distill it, and it's done, unlike the mezcal process, which is open air fermentation, 2 weeks in a pit roasting before it even gets to that point. So definitely, you know, while it was introduced truly by the Spaniards, it's the time-honored tradition since then has not changed in the making of these alcohols that we see here.
And don't they ferment it, like some ferment them in clay pots, some in like copper or different?
Or wood barrels, open wood barrels.
Fermentation versus distillation, you know, the fermentation part just makes sort of the wine or the beer out of the agave.
Right.
And that's usually done in open air vats, and they can be stone or wood or other things, but they're just getting the yeasts and the natural bacteria in there, and that's spontaneous fermentation.
Yeah, and most mezcals will be fermented with the environmental yeast, or basically naturally occurring yeast in the environment, and they're not as opposed to adding yeast to it.
So it's like organic.
It's part of the artisanal process. Yeah, so it's not commercialized. In fact, on our trip there, they showed us a couple of very large, like commercial type distilleries, you know, warehouse sizes that were built in the attempts to sort of commercialize the mezcal process, and they failed. They didn't last, so they're empty.
Interesting.
And the small, you know, they're still handmade all the way, pretty much.
Now there's 3 types, right? There's like wild. What are the 3 kind of?
So Espadín is the only type of agave that will survive its entire life on a farm.
Okay.
So it's the only one that they can cultivate to maturation. They have a very simple process where Tobala, which is in one of these, Tepestate, and some of the other wild ones, they'll sprout and grow for a period of time, but they won't survive. So what they do is they sprout them, grow them for the first year, and then they have their traditional grounds up in the mountains and hillsides. And if they go up, they take those young plants with them, and when they harvest a mature Tobala, they put a seedling back in place.
Got it.
So that's how they maintain their supply.
Awesome. Well, should we get started in tasting some?
All right, sure.
You guys get started in tasting some?
For sure.
I think we actually already did start.
Yeah.
So does the masks come down,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I'll keep mine on, but you guys can go ahead and taste.
Yeah, so what are we starting here with, Dan?
With the Illegal Espadín, Joven, which means unaged.
Yep. It's odd, you know, we're starting to see some mezcals that are coming out with the reposado or añejos, but that's kind of the Americanization of the industry, tequila fans moving into mezcal but wanting to have that familiarity, and that's not a traditional part of mezcal production. So generally you're going to see clear mezcals, not the yellow or amber colored of the aged ones.
And part of that barrel aging, especially with tequilas, is it adds a smokiness to it. But because the mezcal is roasted in a in-ground pit, it has a natural smokiness to it. Without the aging.
I have to say, the first couple of times I had mezcal, I was like, this stuff is gross. It is so smoky. It just reminded me of like my grandfather and Scotch, because it has that smoky kind of finish and feel to it. And so I started with, the mixologist and cocktails are, I started that way. And then I'm like, ooh, I actually just like this straight. Like you can just drink it, and each one is like brilliant in its own way and the way it tastes, and they really do taste very different.
Significant nuances between them, and you have to know how to taste alcohol to get those flavors. A lot of people growing up don't really learn the proper way to appreciate alcohol. No, you really have to aerate it when I'm a chef by trade, so I'm tasting things is an important part of my livelihood and my life. But you have to take that sip and breathe in through your nose and let the oxygen work its magic on the chemicals that are in your mouth from this, and it expands, and there's a tasting process involved, but that's how you really get to understand the different nuances. Even before we started, we tasted this one, and I've never really noticed how sweet it is.
It's very sweet.
And as I enjoy drinking it, but upon sort of drinking it and really thinking about it, I realized, well, it's far sweeter than the other two, and that's the straight espadín.
Okay.
So, whether that's Ilegal's process, the cooking process, or just the inherent flavor profile of the espadín versus the tepestate or the tobalac that are, it's definitely different flavors for sure.
Awesome. Well, why don't you guys try it and tell us what you're thinking?
Well, I mean, maybe you should tell them how to try it.
Yes. Well, so we have some tools.
So we have some tools. But so you'll notice that we have these little bowls, which are very cute, and they're good for regulating our intake. But in Oaxaca, you'll see if you go on a mezcal tour, you'll most likely end up drinking out of a gourd of some sort.
Yeah,
so
the little
and that way you get your nose in it, and you get your first sensory interaction is with the aroma, and and that kind of sets up your whole palate for the rest of
If it was a narrow-topped glass like you see for cognacs, it would concentrate the alcohol odors coming off, and it would burn your nose, and you wouldn't taste as much of the flavors that are married throughout this whole concoction here. So you want that air to really.
And part of the tradition with mezcal is to not dilute it and not bring down the proof. So the real the mezcaleros or the people that the Oaxacans will refer to as a true a true mezcal will be have a ABV of like 46 and above.
Yeah, that was interesting to
really
learn.
high proof.
I was like, oh my gosh.
So they're also traditionally served with this sal de gusano, which is a worm salt. If you grew up going to TJ 25 years ago and you bought mezcal in the plastic bottles, it always had the worm inside it. That's not a traditional part of the real mezcal culture, but those worms are a big part of. They grow inside the agaves.
They're actually caterpillars that feed on the agave.
Yeah, is that the orange salt? Yep.
Yes, the chili powder. Yes.
So that salt is ground up with different spices and then toasted worms, and those worms or grubs are also used as a snack and other things.
And they're also sometimes ground up with crickets or chapulines or chiscapas, flying ants, which are a seasonal delicacy in Oaxaca.
Yeah. It was interesting when I was in the market and just seeing all these dried bugs, and people are just grabbing handfuls of them and snacking on them. I do have to say I liked them in the tacos. Gave a nice little crunch to it.
So, well,
all right.
That's straight.
Salud.
So if you're tasting along with us at home, best thing to do, pour yourself a small sip in your mouth. And I don't know if you could hear it on the microphone. You kind of, gurgle it in while the liquid's in your mouth. Take air in, do the swallow, and then breathe in through your nose while you're still before you've breathed out. I don't know if that makes the most sense. So you slurp, suck some air in, and then breathe in through your nose. And that really is what opens up all the taste buds that you have in your mouth and your nose, and then allows you to really appreciate all the different flavors. And it also burns a lot less if you're not used to high alcohol beverages. So what do you taste there?
Well, sweet, a little dried herbs, maybe some tobacco, some earthiness.
Definitely. Nice kind of orange rind, orange zest, pithiness to it as well. I think I need to taste a little bit more.
Yeah, a little.
How does it, so do you smell them as well, right? It's like you part I'm taking my mask off for a second. But you part your lips a little bit, right, when you breathe it in?
I'll inhale through my nose right before I take a sip, just to get that kind of prime my taste buds.
I'll try that in 3 months. I'm gonna need lots of mezcal. Baby on the way.
It's very soft. Doesn't have a big bite. This is a really delicious mezcal.
Yeah. It's very smooth, very approachable, and also very affordable. I think it comes in around $30 for the 750.
Cool. And great for mixing too if you like making cocktails at
They're
home.
great for Negronis.
Interesting.
That's actually the Negroni has been probably one of the more popular cocktails classic cocktails that have substituted mezcal successfully.
That's cool. I never knew that.
Yeah.
And well, we actually when we were in Oaxaca, we met the owner of Pierre de Almas, who has a a botanical mezcal that's infused with the nine gin botanicals. So it has that the profile of gin, but it's made with agave.
So that's sitting on my bar at home right now.
I have it on my bar at home right now
it's
too.
It's a beautiful label.
It is
was
just
like,
amazingly delicious.
Yes,
it is
and
no
I
longer
think they
on
have
my
like
bar.
3 now, right?
Yeah.
They have one that's like 27 or like high botanical.
I haven't seen it lately. That one other thing to talk about that we don't have represented here. So each of these mezcals is, either a different agave or a blend of agaves, but there is one other type of mezcal that is among the most expensive, but also the most delicious, and that's called a pechuga. And sometimes they call it conejo or other animal names, but these are basically usually triple distilled, if not a little bit more. But in a pechuga, or the similar type ones, what they do on the final distillation is they take either a turkey or a chicken breast or a rabbit or some other cooked animal, pineapples, cherries, other fruits, and it goes into the column of the still while it's distilling that final time through. So you get a crazy different flavor in the mezcal.
Yeah.
Anytime, if you like mezcal, anytime you see a bottle of pechuga, definitely something to pick up. They usually start in that kind of $80 a bottle range.
Yeah, they're higher end.
But that gin botanical one, similar process. So it's generally espadine. It's distilled a couple times, and in that final distillation, they can put some adjuncts in the still that create that different flavor profile. So. And
the one story that I heard about the origin of that I can't verify, I haven't verified its authenticity,
Let's
but
hear it.
It was basically, there was a couple mezcaleros or threw a chicken on the fire pit, the agave, roasting agave, to cook lunch, and they forgot about it, and then ended up distilling the whole batch anyways, and they create. The story was that they noticed they
forgot to take chicken
they added a something to the flavor profile, so they expanded on it. But
it's funny you say
like I
that.
said, I don't know if that's if there's any truth to that.
I feel like there was. So I tasted, or we got to go to Mezcalateca.
Yes,
is that right?
yes,
and
we were there.
I remember they had mentioned a mezcal with chicken in it, and so that must be it.
Pechuga. Definitely one to check out, and most like Old Town Liquor here in San Diego and other stores that carry a fairly decent broad range of mezcals, you'll always find pechugas among them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the second one.
So the second one, we have our coach,
and
he and I actually met Pedro Hernandez, the master distiller of this. It's definitely was a surprise upon driving up this dirt road into the town of San Baltazar. And we came to a little house that was probably about 20 feet by 20 feet. And then it had the entire distillery is outdoors, just on a porch, and you're staring off at a mountain peak that kind of looks like Diamond Head in Hawaii, about 7,000 feet up in the mountains. And they've been making it for 2 or 3 generations for Coach and a couple other places. And just to see the true production sense, there was no money put into this. This was not a tourist destination. This was purely for the purpose of making mezcal, and we had a really wonderful time visiting there and tasted a lot of things that you don't normally see.
Yeah, they sent their Spanish intern to come pick us up at our Airbnb to give us a tour.
I love that. And on this bottle, I think what's really cool, and I noticed the mezcals that we buy in Oaxaca too, is like they list everything out. So it almost feels like a nutrition their own nutrition.
They're very proud of their product.
Yeah.
And actually, when we were here, we met Pedro's brother, who lived next door and worked for a smaller operation, Palenque. For those of you at home that don't know, mezcal is distilled in palenques, which instead of distillery, it's called a palenque, which is basically a family home, like a ranch type situation. Pedro's brother was disillusioned with his brother, the path his brother was taking with distilling, because he was getting into blending ensembles and diluting some of his products. And his brother believed that they all about single wild varietal, non-diluted, 95 plus proof mezcal.
Oh my gosh.
And he had a pitcher of mezcal.
I think we had milk jugs, glass pitchers,
a broken pitcher, and he's like, try this. He's just waving at us from the road, like, come up here and try this.
Yeah.
And it was at that point where there was a part of me that said, that thought like, well, is this the stuff that's going to make us go blind?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But it turned out to be like one of our
Awesome stuff.
favorites. One of our favorites. It was a lumbre that was really sweet, and had a really good mouthfeel. It went down. It was really smooth.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it was just part of the experience. When
Yeah.
you go to places like Oaxaca, you can't go with an agenda where you're going to go here, here, and here, because you're not going to get the true spirit of
Right.
it. And we, like Dang mentioned, we had a driver arranged by one of our friends in the industry that owns Fidencio Mezcal, and they took us out to Fidencio's Palenque, and we did some harvesting of agaves and got to break down piñas, and then we just went on the road with them, and we ended up in
awesome.
San
That's the best way to
Balthazar,
do
we
it.
ended up here, we ended up at a diner that had no food left and one table in the whole building, and we ate everything they had left.
I think they
in
said
sight,
there was
and
5 of us, and there's 7 of us, and they were like,
We
"We
only
only
have
have enough
food.
food for 3. We have 3 servers. Okay, we'll do
We'll do
family
it.
style."
So
And
We each
all
get
the
a tortilla.
Oaxacan cheese.
yeah.
Oh,
the
yes.
best cheese
Yeah,
ever.
and tlayudas.
Everything is so good
Yep.
there. Okay, so why don't you try this and tell us what you think?
So this is the
Tempestate.
tepestate. Wait, we have to share the traditional toast. So there's a saying when you drink mezcal. It's para todo mal, mezcal.
Okay.
Para todo bien, también. For everything bad, drink mezcal. For everything
Everything
good, drink mezcal.
I love that.
Yum. This one definitely feels a little hotter in alcohol.
Definitely.
It's a little more buttery too.
I think it's a 90, 96. Is it? What is it?
Yep, 94.
94. Sorry, I was off by a
Pretty
couple.
hot.
That's pretty good though.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Really good.
So what do you guys like to eat with mezcal? I mean, obviously other than tacos.
I don't know if you really need
Anything
other
else?
than tacos.
That's true.
Well, we ate a lot when we were in Oaxaca.
No, you ate a lot. This guy has a stomach
Yeah.
like I've never seen.
We did a 9-course tasting menu, and then we went and got tlayudas on the street, which is like a Mexican pizza. So it's a large tortilla that's fried on a comal, spread with like beans and cheese, and it's like a Mexican pizza. And you can
Yeah.
fold it over. But so we had one of those, and then I had been enamored by this hamburger cart called the Congre Burger that had this little crab logo, like little crab with like hamburgers in his claws.
Krabby
Yeah.
burger.
And at first I thought it was a crab. The first night in town, I saw like a crab burger. That sounds gross.
Yeah.
Especially when you're like 200 miles from the ocean.
Yeah, yeah.
Right,
Up in
yeah,
the
I
But
know.
mountains.
but after a few mezcals, a couple days of drinking mezcal later, I was like, crab burger sounds really good. And so after our what the
Fifth tasting of the
Yeah.
night.
Yeah. I tracked down the Congre Burgers cart and asked for a Congre Burger. Asked if there's crab in the Congre Burger. They said no. The crab is just their mascot. So I was a little disappointed.
It's like Krabby Patties from
but once
SpongeBob.
he started making that Congre Burger, I was
So good.
well. So first it starts off with 2 really thin patties, Mexican patties, a couple slices of bologna, some bacon, some grilled pineapple and peppers, and then mayo slathered bun, all put together.
Sounds good. It sounds
was-
like something I would like at like 1 o'clock in.
I'm going to give my pro tip. And we visited a place, and I think it's been on the same corner for a long time, but
Yeah.
they have a Facebook page you can find. There's a taco truck there called Lechoncito del Oro.
Is that
And
the pig? The pig
rose
one?
suckling
yeah,
pig.
yeah, yeah. It sounds good. We went 3 times.
It is
Yes.
the best
Yeah.
tacos I've ever had
Yeah.
in my entire
They are.
life. I
I
don't
can
follow
confirm.
any businesses on Facebook. I follow them
Yes.
on
Yeah.
Facebook on
Yes.
the off chance I find myself in Oaxaca again someday. That if you go to Oaxaca, that's where you have
That
to
was
eat.
my
They
first
were-
stop when I went back last year.
Yeah, they are amazing. We went. My husband really wanted to go, and we were with a ton of friends. We were there for a wedding, so we got to do the whole cultural experience too of parading down
Oh, cool.
the different streets and such. But yeah, almost every night we were like, all right, going back. We were going back and eating the tacos
Yep.
almost every night.
It's an amazing place for sure.
All right, second one or third one now. We got-
I'm still
Well,
enjoying.
Oh,
this
you're still
one
enjoying it?
here.
Okay, okay.
You can't rush mezcal.
I know that's
you
true. That's true.
So if you are tasting along, definitely, it's soft. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't have a hard bite.
I mean, it's got some heat to it, but
Yeah.
it drinks smooth. It's got some floral notes. A little herbaceous.
Almost some apple quality to it, or a little stone fruit at the end. It's a little more fruit forward than this one, for sure. The smoke level is about the same on both, though. Different flavor than Espadín, though.
Yeah.
And if hopefully you've got one of these kits, so you have a couple little bottles of each. You really have an opportunity to see the difference. They're same process, so similar plant, but they definitely have different flavors from the compounds.
And pretty much they're all from the same region in Oaxaca, in the mountains outside Oaxaca. I think Santa Catarina or San Balzar, that little area.
So our last one has my favorite varietal mixed in. So this is a blend, Espadín, which is of course the cultivatable variety, and then Tobala, which is a very hard to grow in the rugged terrain, grows really in, like you mentioned, rocky outcrops and the sides of mountains, not just up on the fields and mountains, but you have to be pretty determined to harvest a Tobala.
And Tobala was my first introduction to wild mezcal.
Drink that.
Yes, I know.
Nobody else knows it's only 7:30 in the morning right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, shit, make it a double.
Yeah. Mezcal.
Oh, I can smell that one. I don't know if it's just because I'm closer, but I can.
So this is also made by the same mezcalero as the Kosh, Pedro.
Okay.
So we've met the guy twice.
Yes.
In 2 bottles.
That's awesome.
And when I was in Oaxaca last year, it was Nguyen that makes El Viejo, the one we're tasting now. That they were the one that took me around and really got me kind of behind the scenes in Oaxaca.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like now I need another trip to go back and kind of get that experience. It's
Yeah.
different.
So one of the things if you're into wines or you know anything about wine at all, they talk about terroir, which, the flavor of the grape really comes through, whether it's calcium-rich soil or volcanic soil or dry farm, wet farm. And of course, when you start getting into these wild agaves, how it's grown, where it's grown, and the type of things that are growing around it in the soil is a really big part of it. And Tobala, to me, is the best example of a mezcal where I don't really think about the plant when I drink this. I feel like I'm tasting the dirt. I'm tasting the earth. It's got, they make fun of me because it has a little bit of a marshmallow flavor to me that I've always.
See that, some
Moldy
of them.
Band-Aids.
Moldy marshmallows, yeah.
I always say some of them taste or have that banana Foster's finish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
like,
earthy.
Yeah,
very earthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tobala, again, takes 10 to 15 years to reach maturity. It only grows in the wild other than that first few months where they can kind of get the seedlings to grow. They take them out and replant them as they go. But this
is a blend of Espadín and Tobala. It makes it cost-wise it's more approachable.
Right.
Also, it's also easier to manufacture because you don't need as much to harvest as much Tobala.
Yeah. That is one thing I've noticed with mezcals. They can be a little more pricier than other spirits that are out there.
Yeah.
So if you see like an Espadín, the Piña, it's a good about this big.
Yeah.
And they say that basically each Piña will equal 1 bottle of mezcal.
Really? I did not realize
Yeah,
that.
so I don't remember. I think they said there's about 200 piñas that go in the pit at one time. So that that whole process, you're going to yield
And
less than 20
I was talking
mezcal.
about earlier, these palenques are small operations, and a lot of these brands the mezcal's been along much longer. The mezcal recipe as it is has been along a lot longer than the label has. So basically, a lot of these brands are someone that discovered, came across these small producers and just decided to
Pedro's
put money into
family,
it.
I think they said 3 generations have been making these mezcals.
Wow.
They haven't had the Coke or the Union label on them. So they've turned their art into something saleable through companies that will want to use them. So I know we're getting to the end of this all, so we just want to do a quick review. Most cost affordable, most plentiful varietal, Espadín, the only one that you can grow by yourself. Delicious way to start mezcal. And then we had 2 others here. We had the Tepestate, and then we had the Espadín that had a blend of Tobala, and that is 2 wild varieties. So hopefully you have an opportunity to taste your way through these things. Start here, do it in the order that we did it in, and experience the wonders of it. Find some worm salt. If you, I know you can jump over to Specialty Produce.
Yes.
They sell it there if you can't find it
because
anywhere else.
they weren't allowed to import it for
a little while,
up until a couple of years ago.
Oh,
and same with
really?
Coke. When we were down in Oaxaca in 2014, Coach was not yet exported to the U.S. So it's only in the last couple of years that it's been available here north of the border.
Awesome.
So we hope that was informative, and hope you learned something and enjoy some mezcal.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I learned a lot, so I'm excited to be able to drink it, and I'll hit you guys up in January and say, hey, can you run me through it this time so I can really experience it. And
we know Bivouac has some killer tacos to go along with this, so hopefully
you're enjoying those.
Yes, they do.
Because you might need those after, after finishing this tasting.
I know, especially with what 40. Some of them are 46, probably 48. They get up, they get high.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We should end with a toast.
Yes.
Oh.
I'll toast to you guys too.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
for being a part
Cheers.
of it.
Thank you, North Park.
Thank you. And thank you so much for tuning in these last couple of weeks. I am thrilled that it was such a great time, and I'm sad to see it end, but hopefully you'll be joining us next year. Hopefully next year it's in person and we can have the festival again here in North Park and get to celebrate all of our North Park businesses and just celebrate them. So thank you so much for joining